Expand your mind, don't let it wither and die. You'll find that it lifts your spirits high to the sky. So meditate.
Let's start off a little bit. And one of the questions I had is, because you're very focused on two things that I find very interestingly correlated. And I'm curious to know if you also see this correlation where, for me, I grew up playing a lot of sports, was very athletic and competitive in my mindset. But at some point, that all ended, and I, that sort of took over a recreational role in my life. But I found that business and kind of that entrepreneurial sort of in spirit is sort of a substitute a little bit for that as an adult. And so when I came across, your profile online and started following you and, was reading into what you're about, I see this sort of correlation as well between people who are very physical, but also very driven. What led you to down this path originally?
Yes, great question. So like you kind of mentioned, I played competitive sport as a young kid. So I was actually fortunate enough to play competitive football. I know you guys call it soccer over there in the UK at a good level. And what that allowed me to do was really build a solid base for fitness. But I'd say more than that, it kind of built a bit of a mindset, right? So it built a mindset at a young age, anywhere from sort of 7 to 16 years old. I was training, 2, 3, sometimes 4 days per week, playing a game on the weekend alongside school and things like that. And I think having that kind of level of, you could say, discipline, activity, competitiveness as a young kid is basically, I think, given me the drive that I now have in my adult years, because, I was going, around the country playing football against these, some of the best players in the country when it came to soccer. And to do that, I guess you have to have a bit of drive, and there's a level of competitiveness to it. So I think that really kind of got me into what I do now, which is obviously running the business. And as business is highly competitive. It kind of is that player versus player when you break it down. So, the more I guess you can stay disciplined, the more you can stay focused, the more competitive you can be, the more successful you can be in a business environment as well.
Yeah, you touched on something. You mentioned the word discipline there, and I've found that to be such an essential thing. And I'm also a big fan of Jocko. If you know who Jocko Willnick is,
I love Jocko.
I'm just all about that. Having the discipline to make yourself do the hard things that maybe aren't fun or you don't want to do, but they're necessary to achieve the goal is what I have found to be a bit of and I make no claims, I'm not saying I'm wildly successful by any means or anything like that. But, I have found that there is a differentiator between people who have the discipline to make them just take that first step to do the thing they don't want to do, that they're uncomfortable perhaps doing, is a differentiator between those that are able to do that and those that are not able to do that in their path in life in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And it translates over to everything, like you said. So, sometimes you don't fancy going to the gym and training, but the person that wakes up every day and goes to train, well, he's going to be in a better position than someone else that, says, oh, I'm only going to do it when I feel like it. And it's the same as, that translates to business, right? There are days when you don't want to, maybe talk to that prospect, speak to that client, send that message. But fortunately, if you want to be successful, you're going to have to do it, and you're going to have to show up regardless of how you feel. So I think that motto is great for life. And it definitely is something I've carried through myself, is to just kind of always show up, always be consistent, to always be in the game. I think, as long as you're in the game, you've always got a chance. And, as long as you're willing to push forward through, the adversities, the setbacks, the failures, and you're just you're continually putting in the reps to show up. I believe that can help with success, and something I've found that's worked with myself.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I have never been the most talented. I've never been the most intelligent. I've never been the most anything, but I'm also not the least probably anything, and I found that, just by grinding harder than people and sometimes taking the long road, unfortunately, has been, the right call. And for a long time, I'll just, speak freely here for a minute. I really felt kind of out of place, like with how I felt and how everyone else was always being like, why are you doing this? Why are you putting yourself through this? Why don't you just go this route? It's so much easier. And it really wasn't until I came across David Goggins that I found that I was like, man, this like his circumstance is very different, obviously, in his life, but you know, that mentality of grinding it out every day, being out there when no one else, and it made me even think back to like when I was a kid. I can remember, and I applied this in sports as a young age, and obviously it's carried through, but I remember my dad telling me I was out like shooting basketball when I was probably 5, 6, 7 years old, maybe one night, and it was getting late, and he was just like, well, you could stop, but there's somebody else out there. And he pointed off to the sunset, and he's like, they're out there practicing, getting better than you. So you just need to consider that. And that always kind of stuck with me. You know, you can really make up for a lack of perhaps raw natural talent by just, like you said, showing up every day, grinding it out, being committed and doing, giving it your best.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's a great speech, you could say, or analogy from your dad as well, right? To say there is someone else out there that's putting in the work while you're not doing it, right? So you better kind of push yourself. And I've always carried that mindset with me as well. I think that's a good perspective to have on things.
Yeah. I've like I said, I've even physically, like I find it very therapeutic for me to, when it comes to exercise. To me, it's probably like, don't get me wrong, it's physical. I like being in good shape. I feel better physically when I'm in shape, but it's also like a bit of mental therapy in some regards as well. And I think too often we get a little bit comfortable in our daily lives, and we get a little complacent, and I think it allows us to let the mind wander. But I feel like when you go through a really difficult workout, it sort of puts everything else in perspective, and it seems easier if you've just really grinded through something that was extremely physically exerting. And for me too, it's not just the mental aspect, but it is the physical aspect, because, if you're physically in better shape, your immune system is stronger. You're typically not going to get injured as often. And, even though I obviously am never going to be a professional athlete or anything, I know that I'm going to miss work less. I'm going to have less downtime if I, just take care of yourself. So in a way, it's like an overall, you're really training for life is what you're training for. It's not just a specific thing. You're training for everything.
100%, man. And I'd say, the highest ROI thing that you can do is look after your health, because when you look at everything, right, building a business, having a great relationship, building a good network, doing all the things that you need to achieve, everything rests on one thing, right? Your health. If you don't have your health, you can't be good in any of those areas. Your health is like the cornerstone, the foundations, everything that's good in your life. And, I think that, that you mentioned there about kind of doing hard things, like that is the whole point of, I think, exercising and fitness and health, because your stress tolerance goes up so much after, doing a hard workout. Every morning, if you wake up and you do a hard workout, going into work is a breeze. Have you ever done that, where you've kind of done a hard workout in the morning, you might have done some HIIT, a heavy lift, you walk into the office and like, everybody else is still waking themselves up. They're still tired. They're like, they're hitting a coffee. You've hit your workout. You walk into the place and you're like, shit, man, I feel $1 million. I feel great. Like, let's go attack the day. I'm ready for whatever's going to come at me. And I think that if more people did that, they would straight away start their day with a different perspective, because life at the end of the day is a perspective. And unfortunately, we go through tough times. Everyone has trials and tribulations, but you want to put yourself, in my eyes, in the most powerful position possible to, do the things you need to do each day, but also to be happy. And I think that really comes from doing the hard things that come at the beginning of the day, maybe, or from fitness, from following a diet, from being disciplined, because the rest of the stuff you do then seems a lot easier, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And I prefer, probably in my younger days, I would work out later in the day when I didn't have so much responsibility. But, now the only way to do it is first thing in the morning before 6 a.m., And that's the only way I'm going to have time to get it in, which really brings me to my next thing. You know, it is, as you mentioned, a huge boost. Like your energy levels are right off the charts right from the beginning of the day after your workout, when it makes such a big difference. But the other thing that I come across a lot of time with people is, and maybe that's why I have to do it before 6 a.m. is they're like, I just don't have the time. And I know you have a lot of experience, working with people, talking with people who probably encounter this as well. Like, what do you sort of recommend, or what do you do personally even that is, because for me, I've got a few people that I talk to about this, that I'm trying to get to work out more. And they've never done it in their lives. And I'm like, look, you just have to pretend like you're in college or it's part of your work day. Instead of a business meeting from 3 to 4, you've got gym from 4 to 5. Like, you just have to schedule it in and make it part of what it is you're doing. That's the only way you're going to find the time to do it. What kind of tips, or how do you handle those situations for people who are really busy with their day?
Yeah, so it's a great question, man. And, there's context to a lot of things, right? So everyone's going to have a different schedule, a different life. So it's very hard for me to speak specifically to one person. But what I can say is, broadly speaking, working with lots of entrepreneurs, the guys that wake up first thing in the morning and do their workout, as soon as they wake up, before any work or anything like that, are the guys that are the most consistent and seem to get the best results. And, that kind of tells a story, I think. I think it is that when you're a busy person and you hold a lot of responsibility, your day is going to be completely consumed by lots of things. It could be, taking the kids to school if you've got a family. It could be putting out fires within your business. It could be being completely derailed by something that happens in, your job if you're an executive. So, I find personally, when I get derailed, like, I'm like, fuck my workout, I don't want to do it. And like, the likelihood of it kind of happening goes down. So if I can wake up first thing in the morning before doing any work or talking to anyone, going to the gym or, working out from home, hitting a workout and being like, hey, that's done for the day. I feel awesome. I've, paid my dues. I can now tackle the rest of the things that come at me. And not only is it kind of a convenience thing, but there's also research out there to show that, working out in the morning improves something called BDNF, which is, I always get this wrong, but it's brain-derived nootropic factor, something like that. And basically what that means is, if they did a study on people that worked out in the morning and people that did not work out in the morning, and the people that worked out in the morning, they actually had a higher level of brain power and were able to make better decisions later on in the day and had more mental energy compared to the people that actually sat on their ass and didn't do anything in the morning, which was crazy. And the first kind of group, they also did like a midweek walk during the day and broke up the day by doing a stroll. And they performed better in tests of cognitive function, decision making, and basically cognitive ability compared to the group that didn't do any exercise. So to put it kind of simply, doing exercise in the morning makes you smarter and helps you make better decisions throughout the course of the day. Now, if you're a CEO that's running a 6, 7, 8-figure company, even a 9-figure company, your decisions are very important. So to get that extra edge, like working out in the morning can have a big impact on, not just, your convenience, but also potentially the future of business, the decisions that you make that are high leverage and things like that, which is really interesting. So I do try to say to my clients that, wake up in the morning, hit a workout before, you start your day. And that can be the best way to kind of set things up as a busy person.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's always a struggle between, for me, speaking from my experience, it's always a juggle, because I'm probably juggling 4 or 5 different probably jobs all at once and trying to do different things. And, there's just never enough time in the day. And I have always felt like getting up early, especially living here on the West Coast, sometimes I'm talking back on the East Coast. So getting up early, I feel like not just keeps me more in line with what's going on back there, but also gives me a jump start on people here on the West Coast, to be completely honest. And so I find that getting up early is essential, getting a jump start on the day. 100% agree. Like if I sit down at the computer before I go down to the gym, it's a risk that I'm going to derail myself. But if going down and getting it out of the way is definitely the most guaranteed way that I'm going to get it in and get it done for the day. But I struggle too with coming into the end of the day, winding down and making sure that I get enough sleep, because I cannot express how important I think the sleep is, because what I have recognized over the course of my life is that and I don't get sick very often ever, really, knock on wood, but and I attest a lot of that to the fact that I'm fairly healthy, and I tend to notice when I start feeling a little bit bad, it always correlates to a lack of sleep that I've gotten over the previous week or so. And if I will just consciously make the decision that tonight I'm going to go to bed, I'm going to get a full 8, maybe even 9 hours of sleep and get caught up a little bit. And if I sort of get back on a routine of 8 hours, it makes such a difference. And I never end up getting sick most of the time. And I feel like this is something too that was, I know over the last couple years, and you're in a different country, and things were handled maybe differently, but certainly here in the US, I felt like there was a huge opportunity over the last few years to really drive home this message of eating better, exercising, and getting enough sleep, as opposed to other maybe easier solutions for people. But how do you balance getting up early, getting that jump start on the day, and winding down early enough at night to make sure that you're getting those 8 hours of sleep, or at least 6, 7, maybe 8 hours is probably ideal, but.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the key really is having consistency with your routine. So what this means is kind of like consistent sleep times and then consistent wake times, because your body, likes something called homeostasis. It likes to stay in like the condition or the the state that it's always in. And this is why people find it hard to drop fat, or people find it hard to build muscle, because your body doesn't want to do any of that, right? By its default state, it wants to stay the same. And what your body likes is routine. It likes to go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. And naturally, this is kind of how our bodies has functioned for years, right? If you look at Neanderthals, they'd kind of go to bed in the evening when it's dark. They'd wake up at sunrise. They didn't have alarm clocks back then. They woke up in line with the natural rhythms of what was happening outside and what was happening in the environment. And I think that that's a very good kind of structure to have as a person as well, is to try and get to bed early as much as you can, and then wake up when your body naturally wants to wake up early after 7 to 8 hours of sleep. If you're healthy, you shouldn't really need any more than that. 8 hours of sleep is probably majority of the population. And from there, you're then refueled and ready to go hit that workout in the morning. Now, one of the good things I think about hitting a workout, and sometimes this can actually be an advantage, is actually going for a walk outside in the morning, because sunlight is actually shown to improve sleep quality. So if you can get up in the morning and maybe either do a workout outside if you live in a nice climate, or walk to the gym, or even just get like a stroll in the morning, that kind of sunlight has been shown to improve sleep quality later that night. So you can see how things are adding up here, right? You sleep well, you wake up in the morning, you go for a walk, you hit some sunlight, and then you find, okay, this is aiding my sleep quality. I hit my workout. And then later on in the day, that makes it much easier for you to wind down and have that melatonin release, which is required for you to obviously have a good sleep. What I would also say is it's really important to have some kind of shut off time before you go to bed from blue light, and definitely screens and work. Entrepreneurs and people that work late, it's a difficult one, right? Because I work predominantly as well with US clients, so I'm always up late UK time, but I try and stick to, a 1 hour window before I go to bed, where I say, hey, look, I'm not going to do any work. I'm going to unwind in some way that helps me relax, where I can empty my brain from work, try and refrain from blue light. And then, after that hour, trying to go to sleep. And that's been really useful in helping me have a consistent routine, helping me sleep better, helping me wake up with lots of energy and things like that. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question there in regards to that.
Yeah, no, I interestingly, you say that, because I have found, as I mentioned earlier, my advice to other people was to just make it part of your schedule. So I have alarms that set off that are literally to tell me to stop working at a certain time at night. If I want to get up at 4 a.m, I have to have a little bit of transition time before I can just go straight to bed, because like you said, the screens are just, they're so harsh on the eyes to go straight into sleep. You talk about, obviously, you mentioned several times, morning is the best time to get your workout in. What kind of workouts do you generally, do you yourself perhaps do, or do you recommend for a morning workout?
For sure. So for morning workouts, I recommend doing something that's quite short and intense, right? Because I think getting your resting heart rate up to a good level is good if you're doing some cardio, and also doing some kind of lifting and training is going to help with how you feel for the rest of the day and things like that, and help you with kind of boosting testosterone. So if you're going to do a lifting workout, I reckon sort of anywhere from sort of 45 to 60 minutes of training in either the gym, lifting, resistance of some kind is a good strategy. Another option is to do some kind of HIIT, right, which is high intensity interval training. So this could be doing some kind of like boxing on the bag, which I enjoy to do. Could be doing some sprints in the morning, something like that. We're really just something to get you moving in an intense way. Now, for some people that may be in a different scenario, they might be, maybe a little bit overweight, or not able to do maybe lifting, or not able to do HIIT. I recommend going for like a brisk walk in the morning. So again, go outside, get some sunlight. It's going to be good for your body. Get that body moving, and kind of do that as you wake up. But the key with it is, you shouldn't really be doing like 2-3 hour long workouts in the morning when you're fasted, right? These should be short and intense. They should be working your body hard, but obviously building up a bit of an appetite for you then to afterwards then have something to eat. If it is fasted, we do have some people that we like to do it fasted, but if you want to have just a coffee, a banana, a little snack before you hit a morning workout, that can sometimes be better, because some people don't like to have food in their stomach before they train, and that's good. So that's kind of how I would approach morning workouts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I like that advice, and it's definitely applicable for myself, because I definitely I won't work out if I've got much food on my stomach. And so I kind of have gotten to this point where if I get up early enough and get my workout in before 6 a.m., then it's almost always fasted. But if I let it slip and I don't get to the gym till like maybe 8 o'clock or so, I may have a banana or something before I go down, just so I've got just a little bit of energy, but it's not really too much on my stomach. That was a question I had. Do you generally recommend people to try to work out fasted, or does it kind of depend on maybe the type of workout that they're doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's a few different schools of thought regarding this, and again, context. So if you've maybe eaten late the night before, and you've maybe eaten a lot of food, then I think it's okay to wake up fasted and train, because your body's still got extra calories to fuel you for those workouts. But I think for most people, it's a good idea to maybe have something light before you go work out, have something in your stomach, load up on some water and maybe some caffeine like coffee, and then go and hit your workout. I think you're going to have a much better quality workout if you've got a bit of food in you compared to being fasted, unless obviously the fasted state is not too bad because you've had food the night before, if that makes sense. If your goal is to bulk up and you really want to start actually building muscle, then I would 100%, have, some food for breakfast. Just that's going to help you hit, it's a lot amount of calories for the day and give you even more energy. But if you're for fat loss, I would say, either fast or have a light or protein based breakfast before you hit a session.
Yeah. Yeah. You've talked a little bit about different kinds of workouts there. One of the things I find is that, and I'm not sure where it really happened, but here in the States, it feels like there was a thing about cardiovascular health that was drilled into our brains for many, many years. And that was it's obviously very important. And I think there was a recognition by a large part of the population, and it's continued to grow, that being healthy means having good cardiovascular. So, you go run, you go bicycling, whatever that is. But there's a large portion of people that do those activities, but don't necessarily do resistance training. And what I have been reading over the last, several years, in fact, is, that as you age, resistance training is maybe more important as far as your bone density and your muscular structure and your just ability to keep your balance as you get older and maintain that, coordination, so to speak. Do you experience that as well, where or do you see something different where, people are more they understand they need to do cardio, but maybe they're not aware and don't really practice resistance training very much?
Yeah, it's a great question, man. And I think that the mainstream narrative, and you could say the conventional health advice, has always been, hey, look, you want to lose weight, get on the treadmill, right? Start running and, do that. And, it's a good start, right? For somebody that's a couch potato to go and start, moving, doing some exercise is great. But I think, the most optimal way to really focus on health as you get older is to combine a really good diet with resistance training, because I guess for most people, what they want to achieve is, less body fat and more muscle mass. Well, how do we get there? Well, how do we get muscle mass? We need to go and resistance train. And the benefits of resistance training are it's going to help your joints as you get older. Naturally, as a person, you're also going to atrophy, right? So you're naturally going to lose muscle as you get older. So we want to build and keep as much muscle as possible as we get older, right? It's going to help with joints. It's going to reduce the chance of sickness, the likelihood of, you breaking a bone when you fall. Like having more muscle is like the key to health. And not to mention, it's going to help with you looking younger, right? Like lifting weights is one of the best anti-aging formulas, right? And it makes your skin good and things like that. So I really think that approaching a program from a resistance training standpoint fundamentally and getting that right. So maybe lifting 3 to 5 days per week or doing some form of resistance, whether it's kind of body weight workouts, and then really, combining that with a good diet. So this could be a calorie controlled diet in my eyes, something that is high in protein and also that is going to include nutrient dense foods. So nothing too complicated, cutting carbs extremely, going just protein, going vegan, none of that kind of extreme stuff. Really just having foods that are from the earth, right? So, meat, fish, eggs, vegetables, healthy sources of carbohydrates, single ingredient, nutrient dense foods, and combining that with the resistance training program. Now, as long as the calories are, at the right place, that person is going to look amazing after, 2-3 years of following that protocol, which is very simple, right? Very blanket and generalized. But, if you can resistance train, you can start, lifting weights, and then you combine that with a high protein, calorie controlled diet, which is mainly including single ingredient foods, man, you're going to be in an amazing position. Another big staple as well that I recommend is walking. Walking is so underrated, and it's a great thing to actually combine with the resistance training. So resistance training is very high intensity and can push your body and central nervous system a lot. Walking is very low intensity and is good for recovery and removing the lactic acid from your muscles. So that kind of combination is awesome because it's kind of like the yin and the yang. And obviously walking has so many benefits, especially if someone is very obese, right? It really helps them get that weight off of them before they go in and do some intense exercise. So those would be kind of like my kind of like foundations before we thought of doing, any running or anything extreme. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think cardio is very important and it's great for your cardiovascular health, but to really just be healthy and to, reduce body fat and build some muscle, I think the weight training, the walking and the diet combination is really the best bet.
Yeah, and especially for people starting out, I think sometimes they're intimidated by going to the gym and weights, using equipment they've never done, or looking at free weights and not knowing what to do with all these dumbbells. Because form is important, especially if you don't want to get hurt and, not injure yourself. But there are, especially if you're just starting out, there's just doing body weight exercises is a really, I think, underrated way for people just to start. Do something at home where nobody's watching you. You don't have to feel self-conscious. You just do it until you get comfortable, and then you can take it to the next level and maybe try going to the gym or whatever it is. So I think that's a pretty underrated aspect there as well. You also touched on like nutrition just being simple, and I kind of really agree with your thought process here. I've kept it very simple for a long time. Just, simple foods. I've, cut out, if you cut out fast food probably isn't as much of an issue as it is over here. But that was a key thing that I found that, I cut that out except for rare instances. Maybe when I desire an In-N-Out burger or something, but, the other thing I think that is vastly overrated, I know people look at fat, they look at calories. For whatever reason, at least here in America, there is an oversight on the effects of sugar. And I even see this with like products that say they're healthy or they're organic or they're whatever. And if you look at them, they're like chock full of sugar though. And I don't know what's happened over here, but it's almost like the sugar companies have went around and told the FDA, hey, can you not consider us a bad thing? But I know that when I eliminated sugar, because I remember growing up, I can remember my mom used to buy these sacks of sugar, just like a sack of flour, from the store. And I don't know, we probably went through a couple of those a month, in making drinks and baking foods and whatever. I've never bought sugar as an adult ever in my entire life. And, yeah, I like sweet things. I've got a sweet tooth, but I have not missed that. And I feel like that's one of the easiest things that people could focus on, one thing to cut out. That might be the key thing, because your body does need fat. You have to take in some fat, no matter how lean and restricted you're eating, you got to have some fat. But sugar is one of those things that, I know we need it, but if you're eating fruit and you're getting it naturally, all those added sugars, if you see added sugars on a product like that usually terrifies me a bit.
100%. And I think, especially in the US, you can actually go as far as saying people have sugar addictions, right? And, it's crazy the amount of food that is just consumed with sugar, like you said, the additives, the extra bits of even cereal that people can deem healthy, or even some health foods that they just put loads of sugar on, man. And it's crazy. So like you said, I think the best approach is to really get your sugar from, healthy, organic, single ingredient sources. So fruits, I think that's really the best place to get your sugar, because nobody got fat from eating fruit, right? People got overweight from eating, sugars from these unhealthy foods and processed foods. So I think that's a really good place to start, is to really just focus on, having, fruits. And what you'll find as well is, the human body is amazing. And one of the things is it's adaptable. So your taste buds over time are going to not want sugar after not having it for a while. And this is one thing that I found, if I've gone through an extreme phase of, saying, hey, look, I'm going to cut out sugar and just, eat really clean. After a while, like, my body doesn't want sugar. It doesn't crave the sugar, right? The first maybe week, 2 weeks, you're like, man, I'd love, a chocolate bar or a pack of sweets. But after a while, you do this for maybe 2-3 months. You're like, you know what? I don't really need that taste of, sugar, because my taste buds have now adapted to this healthy and clean eating. And your body actually then goes into this status where if you do consume something that is like heavily processed or heavily high in sugar, you're like, it's like being shot. You're like, fuck, like, what the hell did I just eat? Like, because your body's so used to having this healthy food and, this lack of sugar in its system. So, this is why it's important that people stay consistent, because after a certain point, and when you build this into a lifestyle, you then find that things compound, and it's a lot easier for you to veer away from those bad habits, because your body change, your habits change, your lifestyle changes and things like that. But you've got to, again, be in it for long enough for those changes to actually, come about, if that makes sense.
100%. Yeah. The body is completely adaptable to circumstances of all sorts. And it certainly does change your taste preferences, definitely change, as much as you see them tweak, and you'll see a pack of Doritos on the shelf that say new improved flavor. What that really means is it has more addictive elements to the flavor, and as easily as you could become addicted to that flavor element, your body will just as easily become quote unquote addicted to, craving lean meats and things like that and healthier foods, which brings me to my next question, because you mentioned cereals, and it clicked something in my head, because I don't know if you've seen this, but recently I think they updated the food pyramid over here.
Yeah.
And at the bottom of it are things like fried eggs, red meat, and above those items, pretty high on the list, are things like Honey Nut Cheerios and Frosted Mini Wheats, and ice cream with nuts is above meat and eggs. And it makes me crazy, because especially when I get on, you go on TV and you see public health officials, and I've even heard some in interviews, asked about what their nutrition, what their diet is like, what their exercise regimen is like. And then you see what they look like. And it's very difficult for me to trust or to take their word that this is what's really healthy, because they don't look it, they don't live it. And I know what has worked for me, and it's very hard for me to think that like frosted mini wheats is better than, two or three eggs. Like, it's just very difficult for me to believe that. And so I'm curious to know what your thought is, because for me, I'm beginning to have a real loss in faith in public health when it comes to nutrition advice. At least it just doesn't make sense.
100%, man. And sadly, I think a lot of the stuff that we've been told is either incorrect, not factual, or a lie, right? When it's come to especially things like nutrition, like you said, there are people and health ministers out there that are hugely overweight, giving out kind of this advice to say, hey, look, like this is what you should be doing, which is kind of completely different to maybe the bodybuilder that you see at your gym, or the health nut that right? They have a completely different way of doing things compared to the narrative. And I think that's why it's really important that anything that you see in the health space, you really question, and you look for people that actually not only have maybe practice what they preach, but have a really good understanding of how the body works, maybe from years of training, from years of coaching, and stuff like that. Because a lot of the incentives for these big governments are to promote things like these cereals and these food companies, because they're probably getting tons of kickbacks and taxes from these sales of cereals and stuff like that. And not to go too conspiracy theorist, but there is a level of, the population being dependent on the government, which obviously gives them power, right? Like if you're, unhealthy, you're in debt, you're not as happy, you're going to consume a lot more compared to somebody that is healthy and fit and is self-sufficient. So, I do truly believe that, you should really take your own path on something like this and not follow government guidelines when it comes to health, because we've seen how destructive this has been for people. When you see that 80% of the US is overweight, well, is their health advice really great if most of these people are listening to the government or these health ministers? So trying to find that, I guess, the signal in the noise is really the key. And obviously listening to podcasts like this hopefully help with you people learning this and stuff like that. But yeah, it's wild out there, man. Like, I think the craziest thing was like the pandemic, where there was a big kind of virus going on and a big health scare, and I didn't really see one nutrition expert be brought onto a major news channel or be put out into public to say, hey, look, this is how you eat healthy. This is how you optimize your sleep. This is how you should exercise. This is how you lose the weight. Because we know that, COVID-19, the higher risk you are is if you have more body fat and you're more unhealthy. So let's reduce that risk by being healthy. But there was none of that education. It was just kind of like, hey, look, come get a donut when you get your free shot, and that's it, right? It was ridiculous. So that's kind of my kind of take on it.
Yeah, I felt like it was a huge missed opportunity. When they spoke about, how it was an opportunity to rethink the way we were doing things, I was like, yes, I've been waiting for someone to come out and talk about all of these things that are obviously issues here, at least in this country. And, they just did not take that opportunity up. And, even taking that a step further, I feel like there's a bit of a movement as well, societally speaking, I think, when it comes to health and what body positivity and not fat shaming people is about. And look, I would never want to make somebody feel bad unless it's like maybe my very best of friends, and I'm really worried about them. I'm gonna be like, yo, man, you need to hit the gym, bro. Like you got it. You need to take care of yourself, right? But I'm not going to speak that plainly to people that I don't know, and I would never want to offend anybody. But that being said, I'm starting to see these messages where they're taking examples of people who are clearly obese, and they're being like, nope, they're completely healthy. There's nothing wrong with the way they look or the way they, are able to move. And, I feel like we're trying to be brainwashed into believing something that scientifically I don't think is true. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but or a doctor or anything, but I don't think that these people who are clearly obese are just as healthy as someone who is fit, eats right, exercises, gets plenty of sleep. Like, I have a hard time with that messaging. Do you experience this same type of messaging over there, or is it a bit different?
Yeah, so it's a great question. It's funny. I think the UK is a little bit more maybe intolerant of this kind of stuff. It is not as much being pushed, but I know in the States it's very kind of big, right? And there's a lot of promotion on it. And I think it's completely irresponsible and, morally wrong to say, hey, look, this is someone that is clearly unhealthy, massively overweight, is going to get all of these, really negative health markers from, following this and saying, hey, look, it's fine if you be like this. This is what you should go for. This is what you should look for. And this is what healthy looks like, right? I think that's completely wrong. Now, if people would say, hey, look, personally say, I don't want to be involved in fitness. I just want to be fat and enjoy my life. Hey, that's fine. That you have your own choice and no one's going to stop you, right? Like, it's your life, right? But I think when these big kind of publications, these big news channels, the media really jumps on this bandwagon of body positivity, like, number one, it's not true, right? It's not true you're healthy. And I think number two, it's hugely damaging to younger people that maybe don't know, right? That they're coming through and they could be going through a rough period, right? Where, they're not feeling great and they see this thing on the news that says, hey, look, you can gain a load of weight, have completely no self-control, no discipline, destroy your body. And that's healthy. And we respect you for that. That's the wrong message to send to young people. So I'll always be against that. I'll never stand for that. What people do in their own time, I think is fine. But, I always, and if you follow me, know that I promote good, healthy body positivity, which is going to the fucking gym, lifting weights, eating healthy, sleeping well. That's a real body positivity.
Yeah. Have you experienced, online, you've got a pretty big presence, have you experienced any of what I know some people who have gotten pushback on this kind of messaging as it's, it pains me to say it, but it's been labeled like sort of toxic masculinity to some extent, which is so like it, and look, I know there's this perception of the gym bros that are over, doing incredibly heavy grunting, really, being really loud and slamming weights. Look, I know that perception's out there, but that's not most people that go to the gym. First of all, like, have you encountered this perception?
Yeah, definitely, man. I actually like to play to it a little bit as well. So my Twitter profile picture is a picture of me shirtless, like, after going to the gym and a pump. So I kind of play up to this in my content because it's kind of funny that the pushback I get. But yeah, you get a lot of people saying, hey, like, you're a useless meathead. You don't know what you're doing. Like, you're just stupid gym bro. Everybody calls you all kinds of names because, to some degree, I guess what I'm saying is true, right? Like, actually being healthy and looking after yourself is, the right thing to do and body positive and the real health. But people that disagree with that are probably coping, right? So they cope by, pushing back on that and, attacking me personally, whether that is, what I like to, the way I look or, the stereotype that they've put me at. Yeah, there's tons of it. But again, I know where it comes from. I know these guys are just kind of, keyboard warriors as a sense, and they're quite harmless. So I don't worry too much. But yeah, there definitely is that camp of people there that are really kind of, pro body positivity, anti personal responsibility and doing what's good for your health for sure.
Yeah. Even it's frustrating. I recently saw an article. I think maybe you've seen it maybe as well, where it was talking about too much exercise can kill you, especially if you're a white male, which was crazy. There's anything more than 7.5 hours a week would double your risk of heart disease. I mean, I don't even know where they get get these kind of studies from, but it's those kind of messages, I think, that kind of feed into that, somebody who's already kind of like, these meatheads, rah, rah, rah. And then they see an article like this from the Daily Mail. I don't know how legit it is. I'm not familiar with it, but it's a real publication, putting out an article, and they see that. And I feel like it kind of feeds into that. And they're like, yeah, you shouldn't be exercising. You guys are all wrong. And it's just, I also sort of feel like, again, like you said, if somebody wants to be fat and happy and that's their choice and they know the correct information, more power to them. Same thing if somebody doesn't want to work out and they prefer to not, be physically present in their life, or have a physical presence in their life in the sense that they're using their bodies in a physical way, that's fine on them as well. But it really, it's frustrating that it bothers people, because I don't think that things should be labeled as purely masculine, because I think there's obviously a lot of really in shape athletic women out there as well that are kicking ass every single day. I follow this other girl, woman called Candace. I can't think of her last name, but she's ran a marathon every day for like 124 days, and she's still going. It's like a world record. It's amazing. And it's very frustrating that these things are tried to be labeled to me, that it's masculine. And even if it was a masculine thing, like, I don't think if somebody wants to be sort of embrace some of those elements, there's nothing wrong with lifting weight or hunting or running or eating meat or whatever it is. Same as being a vegetarian. There's nothing wrong with that either. Just let everybody be what they want to be and live how they want to live, sort of, as long as they've got the correct information.
I agree with you, man. I think, unfortunately, the way things are now, anything you do, you're going to get some kind of criticism from some camp or some bit of feedback, right? You put out your opinion online, or maybe your way of doing things. People are always going to be like, hey, look, I hate the vegan, or I hate carnivore, or I hate guys that wear, blue shirts, like anything. Like, there's someone that's going to have a negative comment. So, again, I think it just comes down to being like, hey, who am I? What are my values? What do I believe in? And sticking true to that really is kind of the key. And, as long as you've got all the information there and you feel that you're making an educated decision, then, go and feel and do what you want, right? But just be wary that there is going to be criticism regardless of what your decision is.
Yeah, for sure. You touched on something else, kind of circling back on something you said earlier when you were talking about nutrition and the overall encompassing aspect of this lifestyle approach, which was touching on longevity. And I follow also David Sinclair, who does a lot of research on longevity research. And he's convinced that the first person to live to be, 140, 160 is probably already alive. Yeah. And that they're going to, at some point in the next 30 years, cure aging, which has me extremely excited, because my whole philosophy is, look, if I can, whether I'm getting older, obviously we're all getting older. Age is just, time passes. But if you can be in good shape when they crack this code, it could unlock the ability to not just live a few years longer, but significantly longer, like maybe 25 to 40% longer, even in our generation, is how I'm maybe being optimistic here, but that's kind of how I'm looking at it, which is an incentive to like really take care of yourself. Where do you see, the longevity sciences, I guess you could call them, coming into play? And do you see them really having an impact, or do you think this is maybe a little bit of, optimistic excitement on the behalf of people like myself?
Yeah, it's a good question, man. I think the level of kind of like science now and the level of research that is going into health, specifically, is so high, and we're making strides every day in a lot of things in regards to overall health. I think longevity is a tough one, right? Because it's like, how do we prevent and slow down the cause of death and aging and all of this kind of stuff, which is going to be a little bit more complicated than, hey, how do we just be healthy? So I think we're going in the right direction. I think it's just going to be a case of, okay, how much evidence is there and how much, push is there to actually extend our lives, really far? Like, I think that's going to be the big question. I do think that people will start to live longer. I do think people will start to, increase their levels of health in the older age because of the amount of research, the amount of studies and stuff that have gone on. But maybe I don't know, maybe a generation or two away from living to 140. I'm not 100% sure. I'm definitely not a scientist, but it is something I think that is going to be quite complicated for sure. Not to say that it's not achievable, but it's good to see people like David Sinclair do the research in something like this, because yeah, the more that we can kind of not just live well, but live longer is a really good thing.
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously, we've continued to increase our lifespan, over the course of many years. But the biggest difference to me, and has occurred very rapidly, has been the difference. I can remember when I was a kid, and maybe it was because I was a kid, my perception was different. But I felt like when people were 50 years old, they were just really old. They were just inactive. They were retired. There wasn't that same zeal there. Today, a 50-year-old, man, they're still out here crushing it every day. Like it's interesting to see how the culmination of the knowledge about exercise and how that's evolved, how the knowledge from nutrition has evolved, and how supplementation and even I think there's a growing trend of like testosterone replacement and hormone therapy as people get older and those kind of deplete out. That plays a huge role in people's quality of life. Where do you see things like hormone therapy and those things playing a role? Where do you kind of stand on that? And also like, are there certain supplements that maybe you do recommend that people I shouldn't say recommend, we don't want to give health advice, but are there certain supplements that you think are potentially beneficial for people to take that maybe they just don't realize that they're deficient in it? Even people who eat, I mean, I try to eat very, very well, but I still take supplements as well because I know that there's little holes here and there in that diet.
Yeah, man, it's a good question. I think touching on your first point regarding like TRT and testosterone, I know people that have, been on that, and I don't actually prescribe it myself. I'm very much in the camp of, okay, let's build the foundation of fix a lifestyle. That's a lot of the work that I do. But we do have, I do work with some clients that choose out of their own kind of accord to take testosterone replacement therapy. And for the most part, if you do it through the doctor, you get your blood work done, you do it the right way, and you don't do any of this black market kind of stuff, right? The benefits are incredible, man. Like as an older guy, and I think as a man anyway, testosterone is like the core kind of hormone of your being, right? Like someone that is low testosterone is going to be low energy, is going to have tons of brain fog, is going to be, kind of quite anxious, maybe moody, very kind of stressed. Whereas the guy that's higher testosterone or has optimal testosterone level, he's going to have that oomph to him, right? He's going to have drive, he's going to have focus, he's going to have energy, he's going to have, a high libido. Okay. He's going to be able to think clearly and make better decisions. So you can see the benefit of running the right amount of TRT for people can be really useful. It's also going to help with, improving sleep. It's going to help with aging and looking better and stuff. So, I am, as people get older, I think it's a good thing for people to include it if it is something they want to do. I think that there are tons of benefits to it. Regarding the supplementation, one of the things I always recommend to people that I don't think people consume a lot is magnesium, right? So magnesium is so useful. It's going to help aid in sleep quality and falling asleep. And I like to take magnesium biglycinate before I go to sleep. But basically, a lot of the foods that you have, a lot of the foods are actually like grown in kind of, you could say, patches or in the ground, which is deficient in magnesium. So straight away, we're getting a bit of magnesium deficiency from our food. Also, when we're highly stressed, when we drink coffee and things like that, that naturally depletes magnesium from our body. So it is always a good idea for most people to supplement with magnesium. I think it's something like between 40 to 60% of Americans are magnesium deficient. So if you can supplement with magnesium, especially the biglycinate version, which is going to help you, which is going to be more digestible before bed, that's really going to be useful for you and your health moving forward.
How is that different for somebody who doesn't know? Do you recommend, or I shouldn't say recommend, but how is it different? Maybe taking the magnesium separately versus taking a multivitamin that maybe has it in it.
Yeah, great question, man. So the multivitamin, what happens is obviously you've got all of these vitamins together in kind of one pill, and the way that our body digests it, it's more efficient to take like separate pills or take the not pills or separate vitamins or tablets kind of on their own, because it's going to allow your body to digest them better. So what I like to do is I like to kind of like, if I've got, a bunch of vitamins, instead of taking one multivit, what I'll kind of do is I'll take them all separately. So, I'll have some water, I'll have my magnesium, let my body kind of digest that, then take the next one, right? If it's some vitamin D, I'll then have that one, zinc, and I take them separately, because your body is going to digest that a lot better and then utilize it within your system much more effectively than actually a multivit. So the multivit's great for convenience, and most people taking multivits, good on you. It's not a negative, but I think if you want to take it to the next level, really kind of separating out your vitamins into kind of single form is a really good strategy.
Interesting. And I have to ask, we touched on cardio earlier. Are you a runner? Do you run?
No, I'm not a big fan of running, to be honest, for my joints and my legs. I used to run a lot when I played soccer and played football as a kid. So I played out on the wing. So I was always running. I was always kind of sprinting, but that was kind of like more like HIIT workouts. It wasn't kind of like, long distance stuff. I think I've got up to maybe doing a 5K, 10-kilometer run. I think that's as far as I kind of go. I'm not the marathon type. But I do enjoy kind of, a short, you could say sprint, like a 5K sometimes. I think that's good and enjoyable for me.
Yeah. The reason I ask is, I've obviously beat up and much respect, because, I didn't grow up being a soccer or football fan. But I did get to spend a couple years overseas. I got to spend a little bit of time in Liverpool as well. And so I became a fan a bit of the game, or certainly appreciate it. And the amount of running, I think, is very underrated that footballers do in a game, because it's not like American football or even American basketball. We have play stops with dead whistles. This rarely happens in a match, and so the athletic and the aerobic fitness is just amazing in that sport. And I can imagine the wear and tear that it takes on knees and stuff. But as much as I grew up kind of hating running, I've sort of become another, again, a nice 4, 5, 6 mile run, is a good way to clear the head. But likewise, I've found that I can't run on concrete or asphalt. Like it's too hard on my joints. So I've went to running a lot on trails and such. But before I kind of came to that conclusion, and I found that something that works for me, I struggled with trying to find a lot of other things to get cardio in, because to me, there's still something that's like, no matter how much I sit on the elliptical machine or any of the other aerobic, fitness gadgets at the gym or whatever, it never feels as exerting as actually running. And so I feel like there's just something to running that's, makes it like the ultimate cardio exercise. I don't know if it's probably just in my head, but yeah.
No, I think you are right. Because I think, innately, when we look back to, again, going back to kind of the Neanderthals, the caveman era, to hunt and to get away from any kind of danger, guys would be running and sprinting and things, right, as a person. So it's a very natural exercise for us as humans to do. And I think that's a tendency of a lot of people to want to do running. And don't get me wrong, although it's not my kind of cup of tea, as you could say, for a lot of people, it can be very kind of relaxing. I have a lot of clients that go out for runs when they're really stressed with what's going on with work and business, because it really clears your head. It puts you in a different environment. And after a while, I think a lot of people can get into this flow state when it comes to running, where, they just feel like they're running on kind of air. Like it just feels amazing. It's like very spiritual. So I know that there's a side of that people really enjoy. So, the popularity of running is good, and I think it comes from the fact that it does make us feel good, and there is that kind of comes from our natural tendencies that we've had as maybe our ancestors and things.
Yeah, this is the second time you've sort of mentioned our ancestors and how we probably have evolved as a physical creature. It's something I think that's wildly missed. We grow up in modern society, and we sit a lot. We sit in the living room and we watch TV. We grow up and we sit at a desk at a computer. And it's, if you would have told me when I was in my early 20s that I would probably work most of the time on my butt in front of a computer, I would have laughed at you because I just never would have thought that would have been the case. But here it is. And even for myself, I sit a lot in front of a computer. And I think people don't understand that that's not a natural state for the human body. Like being able to be active and walk around. And, as you mentioned, like for a long time, we were hunters, gatherers. We were, everything we did was for our existence was required some physical element to it. Only recently, in probably the last, 100 years, maybe, that has sort of changed. And so, that's one of my messages. And you touched on just getting out and walking, just doing something physical, get out from, up off the couch, away from the computer is probably one of the best things that people can do just to get started.
100%, man. And like I said, those things that I mentioned, like you said, those things that I mentioned earlier, like walking, getting outside are great. I also think doing one of the things that's really underrated that I get a lot of my clients doing is lots of stretching and yoga. So, we are sat and, hunched over. Luckily now I'm actually stood up. And again, I've bought a standing desk because, I don't like being sat in a position when my shoulders come over. I get kyphosis, I get tightness all around like my upper back and neck. It's not good for me. And my masseuse definitely doesn't like it when I come to her and she's like, yeah, your body's even worse now. So I actually incorporate a lot of stretching into what I do with myself and my clients because again, this goes to longevity, right? Like you don't just want to look good. You want to have a body that has longevity as you age. So, that's feeling good each day, feeling mobile, not getting like frozen shoulders, tight rounded shoulders and things like that. It's a really good thing to do for stress, to relieve some stress, but also just for your overall health moving forward. It's going to be great to have a body that's flexible and it's not tight all the time.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that. Something I completely was overlooking here in this conversation, but it's essential. Like especially as you get older, I've had some friends that made fun of me for stretching and getting into yoga over the last probably 15 years. And now they're starting to understand as they've gotten a little bit older why that's a little more important. And, I'll be honest, I sort of don't enjoy regular yoga, but the hot yoga when that room's, about 100 degrees and you're just really in there, it's such a mental exercise. Again, it's that excruciating difficulty that just clears your mind of everything else. It's almost like a meditative flow. I mean, you're not just sitting there still meditating with your eyes closed, but you're definitely kind of going through a mental struggle at that moment that's very unique. And I also feel like the heat for me is just, it allows the little extra into each of those stretches that otherwise I'm just a little too tight to get the reach on. And so a huge part of that. I would also say the other thing that I think that I've discovered is equally important as the stretching as I've gotten older, and I didn't do it at all when I was younger, was foam rolling and really trying to work out like the knots in your body. Somebody equated it to me when they introduced me to it. They were like, look, man, your thighs are like all these rubber bands, and right now they're all in knots. So you can stretch on them all you want to, but they're still knotted up. And if you work out that knot, you'll find that the muscle will release, you'll get the length, and your stretch will be more naturally will be more effective. And it's made such a huge difference for me as well, both of those aspects.
Yeah, 100%. Like doing a bit of foam rolling and then stretching, what that's going to do is it's actually going to help with your muscles actually growing and getting bigger. Because like you said, when your muscles are tight, what happens is they're like scrunched up, or they're like, having like rubber bands and knots. And then when you're trying to do these exercises with, longer ranges of motion, your muscles can't, contract properly and lengthen properly because they're so tight. So to actually build more muscle and to build, a solid muscle in your body, one of the best things to do is to actually be mobile and be able to stretch, because your capacity to then lift without greater range of motion and things like that is a lot easier. So again, it does play into your kind of favor, being more mobile and being more flexible.
Yeah. It's about having strength, but it's also about being able to use it and having it be pliable and able to do what you want, for sure. Well, tell us a little bit about your program, what you do, and where you can be found, and some of the strategies there that you use with the people you work with.
Yeah, definitely. So, you can find me mainly on Twitter. That's where I'm most active. Twitter.com/the Oliver Anwar, which is kind of my tagline. I'm most active on there. I also have a 6 and 12 month program. We also do 3-month programs for entrepreneurs that kind of want to look great, feel great, and be great. So what that means is if you want to kind of lose some body fat, you want to build some muscle, you want to feel more confident when you walk into the boardroom or whatever it may be, and optimize your health in a sustainable way that allows you to do it while traveling, meeting clients and having a family, then feel free to kind of click the link in my bio and you can find out more about that program. Our program really focuses on 4 key pillars, which is something I can share with you if you are interested, if you do kind of apply and jump on the call. But we follow a 4-pillar system. We kind of have a system there to kind of keep you accountable and track your progress. We use kind of a lot of data. We use apps and health testing to really get an idea of where your body's at and get an understanding of where you want to go to. So that's probably where you can find me in a bit about my program.
So it sounds like this is really along the lines of like a mentoring program. You're obviously not there physically with them, putting them through training sessions. It's really setting people up and hopefully providing them the discipline to get up in the morning and get their workout in, as you've talked about with them probably the day before, right? Yeah,
definitely. And I'd say it's probably a little bit more than just training in person. What it is, it's kind of a holistic health program. So it's looking at your health markers, blood work, looking at your body fat percentage, gut health, where you're currently at, and maybe the changes that you might need to make to your nutrition, your training, your sleep, overall health to be at your best. So I like to think we try and hit it from all angles, which is, hard to do, but it is very much a holistic thing that we try to encompass with our program.
Yeah, no, that's so often I think people single in on one thing. They have one thing that bothers them and they look for one solution that's going to fix that one thing.
Yeah.
And, as amazing as the human body is, it literally, you can mold it into anything you want, for positive or negative. But, there's a lot of potential to it if you just understand how to kind of use it properly and structure it and do those things. And for a lot of people, it is having that holistic approach because everything being so connected, one thing really does affect the other. You just focus on working out hard, but you don't take in the right nutrition. You're going to be sluggish. You're not going to, like, everything just ties together. And I think I really wish that more people kind of viewed their lifestyle and their health that way. And I also wish, and maybe we'll see a trend in that direction, but I hope we see more of this also being talked about, from medical professionals and public health officials, as well as taking that a logical, holistic approach, as opposed to, a good example of this is just recently I saw where there's a new drug out that you can get injected with, I think once every 6 months or something for indefinite, and it supposedly melts away the fat. It's like the key for obesity, since apparently obesity is a disease, and according to some, you can take this shot and it will be a vaccine for obesity. You have to take it every 6 months. And then a couple weeks later, I saw another report on the same thing. I think is it semaglutide, maybe is what it is, maybe. I apologize if that's not the correct number, so not the right name. So people don't go crazy if it's not right. But a couple of weeks later, I see this report, and it says that it's actually yes, it causes you to lose weight and it gets rid of fat in your body, but it also eats away at your bone density and your joints and your cartilage and some other stuff as well. So I think, again, it's like, man, there's just something about looking for the easy solution versus, having the holistic approach and putting in the work to do I don't want to say do it the right way, but that's sort of what I want to say, you know?
Yeah, man. I 100% agree, for sure.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming in this morning. This has been a really great conversation. I look forward to continuing to see you fighting the good fight there on Twitter, and hope everybody gives you a follow there as well.
Awesome, man. No, I appreciate you having me on. This was a great podcast. And yeah, thank you very much.